right, everything's looking good. Just waiting for Locust here. Where's Locust? Locust? Locust, what are you doing? You gotta get on there.
I don't want it.
Season 1 was your best. You gotta go.
I don't want to do this.
You have to do this.
Don't make me do this. I want to.
Come on.
Dude, I just want to talk about Zen philosophy and shit that I love, man. This is so fucking.
Okay, well, talk about that then.
Okay, all right. How about this? Let's start with a meditation. Close your eyes, everyone. Take a deep breath. I want you to imagine the nastiest looking, puke-inducing, omega-level turd that has 4 loose screws sticking out of it. Is it visualized? Okay, perfect. Don't want you sitting around it too long. But that is what season 1 of, Adi Shankar's Devil May Cry series is. Now, I want you to imagine someone going in there and tightening the screws on it. Now, the screws are in there, just much tighter. But guess what, Racer X?
What?
It's still a fucking turd, just with fastened screws. Welcome to season 2. What's up, guys? It's Locust again, regrettably reviewing this thing. You know, it's funny, despite me, according to PSN profiles, being one of the first 25 people to platinum Devil May Cry 5 Special Edition worldwide, being a fan of the series for over 25 years, before the first game even dropped, and sinking well over 1,000 hours into this franchise, people on Twitter have the audacity to insinuate that I am not a real fan. This is probably because whenever I come to town, I steal their girlfriend and leave their mother defiled with a thrust of my personal brand of Stinger. Before I bolster my ego even further, I'm going to ask you to do the same. Smash that like, drop a sub if you're new, and ring that bell for notifications. I think this is going to be maybe the last video I do on this series. Specifically, I have another video which I'd say I'm a little more passionate about, and that gives you an intimation as to why this is going to be the last time I talk about this show on this channel. And let's just say the schizo implications of all this shit is detailed in the video, which will be retroactively linked in the cards. Let's just say, call it an intuition, I don't think this series is very long for this world. But let's get into it already. So for the past few years, I've been on a Zen kick. One of the core principles of it is radical acceptance. You don't have to like what's in front of you, you just have to accept that it is. And honestly, it does cleanse those lifelong contact lens of yours that you perceive life through. Last year, the real Devil May Cry fandom, the hardcore players who actually put in hours, got absolutely cockslapped by an abomination wearing the official license like poo-poo, hiding underneath expensive perfume. I already knew this about Adi Shankar and his antics before the announcement, so my expectations were in the dirt. But even then, it was still brutal to watch. And then the worst part, the Netflix completion numbers went through the fucking roof. People actually finished that garbage. With all the other chaos in my life, I had no choice but to accept the situation for what it is. We're stuck with this series. Part of that acceptance meant admitting the truth. This show is Devil May Cry in name only, and then we must judge it based on the merits of the dogshit foundation that they built in season 1. And you know what? For dogshit as the main fuel, they legitimately ran with it. So yeah, I'm gonna put on my dogshit connoisseur hat on for this one. So with that being said, I started watching season 2 with a completely different approach, and I asked myself constantly, if this wasn't Devil May Cry, would it actually be a good show? And after sitting through all of it, my honest answer is, yeah, maybe. Kind of. But then I asked myself the real question. Would it be a good Devil May Cry show? And the answer to that is absolutely fucking not. There were long stretches where I felt like I was watching some other random dark fantasy Netflix series, or worse, like a fucked up version of Devil May Cry you'd flip past on Rick and Morty's interdimensional cable. Every once in a while, something would pop up and I'd catch myself going, oh, right. I'm supposed to be watching a Devil May Cry show right now. I don't know if it's the animation style, the tone, or what. Those moments were actually kind of rare, and they made the rest of the show feel even more off. That said, I'll give this season credit where it is due. It did address a lot of my issues with season 1, and that review is linked in the cards if you want the full bloodbath on that. This review is a little less venomous, and I'm going to try my best to not retread old ground. But I would say that review is a little more in depth when it comes to everything wrong with the series. And boy, oh boy, let me tell ya, it's a lot. The fight scenes actually have weight and payoff this time. They introduce some real occultic and mystical elements, even though they fumbled a few esoteric details if you know your shit, but that's just a nitpick. I understand that they had to take some creative liberties with this sort of stuff. And most importantly, the antagonist side of things is genuinely a whole lot more interesting this season. Now, here's something I noticed throughout Devil May Cry 2. The well-established characters and their core motivations got completely butchered for the most part. But when it came to the less established characters from the lore, Arius especially, the creative freedom that they had did absolute wonders. I actually really liked what they did with Arius. He plays a slick media mogul who runs Darkcom, basically the human face of the highest echelons of the Illuminati. Charming, exacting, manipulative, cunning, and clearly hiding way more than he shows. There was real vision in how they implemented him into the story. The only knock that I have is that he cracked a little too easily during that Vergil talk show moment. Other than that, he was easily one of the strongest parts of the season. However, even with the plot point they chose, Argosax's return being tied to this once every 150 years eclipse, they still managed to botch his design pretty awfully. In the original Devil May Cry 2, he appears as this faceless godlike entity radiating sun rays, giving him this cosmic apocalyptic presence. In the show, he looks like a giant turd with flower petals protruding out of him. I'm sorry, but something closer to the original solar otherworldly design would have fit the Eclipse lore and the scale of the threat so much better in my opinion. Or maybe I'm just being an overly picky astrology nerd. Let me know in the comments if you feel the same. You also have a lot more Mundus this time around, and I really do think that they do justice with the gravitas of his presence. The VP does have a character arc that doesn't exactly land and continues with the same sort of unnecessary shitting on the Christian faith that is sprinkled all throughout the show. Now, with that minor stuff being said, man, there are some real issues here. The way that they treat the established bosses as straight up cannon fodder genuinely bothers me. In the games, these demons have cool designs, unique personalities, actual motivations, and as for this show, they're introduced just to get jobbed out and mischaracterized almost immediately. Goliath, for example, gets taken out by some random normie soldier in the first fucking episode. Devil May Cry 5, the guy actually had weight and a real reason for doing what he was doing. Here, he's not even Demon of the Week, and that is pretty disrespectful. Then we had the mischaracterization of Beowulf in this, and man, oh man, they screwed this one up. They made him look like a rejected Gargoyles character, gave him that voice that sounds like Nelson Muntz from The Simpsons, and zero aura. This is supposed to be one of the legendary demons, a proud, powerful warrior with a serious presence. Instead, he comes off like a generic high school asshole who peaked in 8th grade. His voice is grating as hell, completely out of character the entire time, and they kill him off way too easily in episode 8. No weight, no memorable fight, just another cool demon turned into a speed bump. Now mind you, in Devil May Cry 3, this is the boss that had our cool badass boy Dante panting at the end of the fight. But speaking of the devil, the absolute worst offender, the one that really kills the whole season for me, is what they did to Dante. They turned the cockiest, most laid back, stylish son of a bitch in gaming into an emotional, naive, easily manipulated hothead who blurts out exposition and has constant meltdowns.
AMC got renewed for another season? That means I have to withstand another season of my favorite character getting butchered! No, I refuse! I refuse to believe Capcom signed off on making Dante anything but cool! I refuse to believe they signed off on that stupid charity! This can't be happening! I need to teach you to grind up Devil's Never Cry! Devil's Never Cry, Trish!
This is supposed to be the guy who cracks jokes while staring down literal demonic entities that have existed for eons. Instead, he's acting like Nero on his worst day. Listen, if they just made this Nero story with Dante as a cool shit-talking mentor on the side, this season would have been much better. They wrote the wrong damn protagonist.
Story. Yeah, we obviously take some liberties, in terms of the world building and characters and stuff. My philosophy has always been, as long as you preserve the core character traits that matter most about these kind of main characters, you can change most other details and it won't really be a problem for the average viewer. Lore heads out there are always gonna have something to say about that.
I operate under two distinct creative banners, Bootleg universe, where I remix, reinterpret, and intentionally take bold liberties and subvert existing IPs. Shankar animation, where I play things straight, honoring the source's material core essence. Captain Laserhawk was being developed under Bootleg universe, The entire series was designed as pastiche, a commentary on the toy commercials and pop culture saturation I grew up with, Every character reinterpretation, including pagan men, was deliberate and served that remix ethos. By contrast, Devil May Cry falls under Shankar animation, where fidelity to original spirit of the IP guides every creative decision. Different brands, different missions, both intentional,
A few moments later.
But But as long as Dante acts like Dante, then he's still Dante, right? Beyond that, the closer you hew to kind of canon lore and like the in-game stories, the more you kind of get hemmed in by it. So, we kind of there was always an intention to kind of create our own alternate universe where we can kind of freely make some fun stories with the characters and kind of introduce them in different ways and kind of explore characterization that they maybe don't get into in the games, and just kind of spread out a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds pretty good, but why do you seem apprehensive?
Because Dante's off, and as a result, everything around him collapses. I mean, his outfit in the season kind of says it all. It's so soulless. He doesn't rock it like the rockstar demon slaying. It almost feels as though that the creators feel as though that anybody could put on a Kobe jersey, but don't realize that not everyone is Kobe. It's supposed to scream Rockstar Demon Hunter. Instead, it looks like some normie in MCU'd inspired tactical wear just threw it on and was just like, there's no real drama going on for it. The code is still the only thing doing any work, albeit lackluster. Everything else is just analogous to watching poop dry on a wall. And now, one of the biggest missed opportunities. He barely talks shit anymore. There are so many moments where Dante should have been roasting his enemies into oblivion, and he just doesn't. His one-liners are sparse as hell, and most of them aren't even funny. The one time he actually tries talking shit to Arius, it's in a goddamn hallucination, and it is incredibly weak. Here's the thing about good shit talk. You have to know exactly where you stand in the adversarial dynamic. You have to know who you truly are. And if you're unsure of yourself or censoring, it falls completely flat. And that is exactly what is happening here. This is further proof that neither Alex Larson nor Shankar actually understand how to write Dante. They don't get the character at his core. They don't understand what it's like to be a real G. Now let's talk about the sibling relationship. The tragedy between Dante and Vergil is never about what they said to each other. It is lived in everything that they did not say. The pride, the silence, the unresolved grief over Ava. Two emotionally constipated demigods expressing trauma through violence because neither of them knows how to process loss like a functional human being. That is the tension in the relationship. Here, they just talk and talk and talk and talk and talk. It feels like Supernatural cosplay demons couple therapy instead of Devil May Cry. A big bunch of those emotional climax moments should have hit way harder. I felt absolutely nothing. To me, at least, this shows a real lack of confidence in the building up of tension of Dante's character arc that would have actually pay off in later seasons. And looking at the contrast between the strong character work on Arius and the antagonists versus what they did with Dante, it really makes me think. I don't believe Alex Larson or Shankar actually have too many original ideas that stay true to the game, or they don't know how to reciprocate them. They don't understand what makes Dante Dante. They just rip character elements from Nero. His meltdowns, his theme song, at least in season 1, and somehow even his fucking voice actor, and slap them onto Dante. And that's pretty egregious. Like I said in my previous video, say it with me, class, Dante is Devil May Cry. You can get everything else right. Vergil, which they didn't. Lady, which they didn't. Mundus, the soundtrack, the visuals, which they didn't. All of it, and if you don't get Dante down, you're trying to build a ceiling with no pillars to hold it up. The whole thing's gonna collapse, which it does. Vergil got done pretty dirty too, in multiple different ways. This guy's supposed to be the proud, lone wolf, samurai-coated badass who moves like a shadow and carries himself with absolute superiority. Instead, we get a version who folds a Mundus way too quickly, gets ambushed like a rookie, and goes on live fucking television like he's craving attention. We gotta talk about that scene real quick. The whole talk show scene felt completely out of character. At times, and I don't mean this as a compliment, but it felt surreal, like I was watching an episode of Space Ghost Coast to Coast, just switched out with Devil May Cry characters. I get it. It's supposed to feel like the public has just seen or been exposed to an alien for the first time, but to me it was like being exposed to a decomposing half-amputated human penis for the first time, served onto you on a platter while you're just trying to enjoy some rest and relaxation in the steam room. And then he gets a call from the president. This sounds like a plot line I would have come up with while I was playing with action figures when I was 5 years old. And don't even get me started on him speaking ill of their mom. That one actually felt wrong on a fundamental level. The only part of Vergil that they kinda nailed was the insecure kid flashback with Eva. Everything else after that just felt hollow. It's the same problem as Dante. They clearly have a vision for the character, but it's not the Vergil we know. They give him these big dramatic moments and then undercut it with writing that doesn't really understand his pride, his silence, his edge. So even when Vergil has cool scenes, they don't land with the weight that they should. I will say the only thing that slightly saved the flatline brother dynamic was a moment at the very end when he pushes Dante away and Dante sees him as this childish incarnation. That was actually a bit touching, but you know, a little pebble is going to make a very big deal when it drops into a very still lake. And did you notice something too? Vergil's coat comes from Mundus and Dante's coat comes from Darkcom. Both of these entities are symbols of enslavement via manipulation to some degree or another. And these are both iconic codes that define these characters, aka their identity. So in essence, what Shankar and Alex are trying to say is that iconic identity comes from slavery? Really? The guy who wields a sword called Rebellion gets his identity from slavery? Then you got the completely flatlined relationship with Lady. Listen, guys, at my heart, I'm a diehard romantic. On paper, I'm totally cool with Dante and Lady getting together. But if you're gonna do it, at least do it right. I get it, this is a fantasy. Super cool, Devil Hunter is laid back and the girl takes the initiatives, rubs tongues, eventually genitals, fine, whatever. Even though there's a file in DMC5 that explicitly states that there's no hanky-panky going on between the two of them. A lot of people seem to be rightfully complaining about how Dante, especially given the source material, would never look at Lady's betrayals as their thing. Where I don't disagree, and I think this is coming from lived experience, falling in love, how it happens, etc. doesn't often make sense. It's like there are no real mechanics to it, and sometimes it's just fucking sloppy. You don't choose who you fall in love with. LGBTQ people, eat your hearts out. But at the same time, Dante, and I mean the real Dante, is not someone who would not allow a dynamic like that to even get legs in the first place. Like, if you're going to do that, you still have to pull off some of the dynamic from the source material. In Devil May Cry 3, after you beat Lady and she starts shooting at him, Dante doesn't flinch, he just walks up, leans his arm on the wall beside her, and establishes dominance in the dynamic. That's the energy. What we got here feels like bad fanfiction. The kissing is sappy as hell and the chemistry is non-existent. With that said, glad Dante finally got laid. I'm genuinely relieved that Shankar didn't lean into that dumbass Reddit projection, Dante is a virgin meme. So fucking dumb. But speaking of stupid, unfunny Reddit memes, they did play into, yeah, I called it. And then there's Devil Trigger, Nero's banger, the pulsing electric roar of Devil May Cry 5's arc slapped onto Dante discovering his Devil Trigger like some cheap Reddit meme bait. Yeah, bro, I'm waiting on a Vergil on a plastic chair and it like my show please, guys, is plastered all over it. Kill me now. And then there's the constant, not all demons are bad messaging like, dog, you're draining every single drop of mystique and cool factor out of the franchise. Demons are supposed to feel monstrous, terrifying, straight up evil. Remember, Devil May Cry literally started as a Resident Evil prototype. Instead, you get the sanitized good guy demons and humans sympathizing with them. No, it completely kills the power fantasy. And on top of that, the anti-Christian jabs and the ham-fisted political shit like they're trying to do a Starship Trooper satire, but with zero actual satire. Can you imagine a Resident Evil adaptation where they're like, actually, the T-Virus has some health benefits and teaches you all about unconditional love? Yeah, that is exactly what this feels like, at least to me. I'm not kidding. The demons themselves also lost a lot of their menace. They're not horrifying anymore. The ones pulled from the games still look cool when they show up, but most of the original good demons they created are just generic as fuck. It really feels like the only time the show knows how to make something visually appealing is when they're copying pre-existing aesthetics and set pieces. By episode 6, I was honestly starting to check out. The pacing is better and the story is more coherent than season 1, but the emotional moments still had zero heart. Big climax scenes that should have wrecked me, I felt nothing. It is a semi-competent dark fantasy show wearing a Devil May Cry costume, but it never actually feels like Devil May Cry. Now, one of the few things I actually praised in season 1 was the original score. Not the licensed tracks, the actual OST, and it was pretty fucking awesome. Unfortunately, I cannot say the same here. A lot of the music just feels tonally off. Not just from the Devil May Cry series, but even from the show itself. Like the scene of Lady riding away with Dante, the track that they chose just felt completely wrong and sappy. It's just fucking bad, man. And don't even get me started on that Skater Boy montage. I don't know what they're fucking thinking. It's not new metal. It's straight pop punk. And the way that they match it with the visuals was just so fucking dumb. There's no other way to put it. I don't know. See you later, boy. That said, the fight scenes were actually pretty damn cool for the most part. Like I mentioned earlier, they actually felt deserved this season instead of just being thrown in for the sake of action. The Dante vs. Vergil fight was legitimately sweet, really well choreographed, and yeah, some people hated the moment where Vergil forces Dante to stab him, But I thought that shit was pretty hardcore. I'm not gonna sip on the haterade just for the sake of sipping on the haterade, you know? But again, we don't see Dante reveling in the joy of combat here ever. So, you know what? For an anime, it's great. For Devil May Cry featuring Dante, kinda sucks. I'll give the creators this one though. Choosing to lean into that full AMV style for the fight scenes was actually a pretty creative nostalgia play. It makes sense for what they were going for in the series, but not in the true tone of the series. But here's the issue. AMVs were basically the original form of content farming back in the early 2000s. They're derivative by design. They take existing footage, slap music over it, and call it a day. So when your actual show starts mimicking that style on purpose, no matter how intentional it is, the end result still feels derivative. You're borrowing the aesthetic of fan content instead of creating something that stands out on its own. That said, the Dante vs. Vergil fight was genuinely well done. They nailed that high quality AMV energy, and the original Papa Roach song was actually pretty decent. It's very catchy. It's still actually stuck in my head. So credit where credit is due on that sequence. It worked. So yeah, after all that, if we're judging this show off non-Devil May Cry standards, Season 2 gets 5.5 feasts out of 10 famines from me. However, on a DMC scale, it gets a 3. And you know what? Somewhere in there are very faint echoes of love for the source material. Somewhere in this Frankenstein monster. It's a step up from Season 1. They tightened some of the screws, they had better fights, stronger antagonists, and a couple moments that actually felt like Devil May Cry. But at the end of the day, it's still the same turd. Maybe a little drier at this point, which is better. Fasten screws. I still don't want to touch it nor be within its odoriferous presence. But let's bring it back to Zen for a second. In Zen, everything has a place in the circle of life. Even shit. Dung fertilizes the soil so new plants and grass can grow. So maybe, just maybe, the purpose of this whole thing is to create so much undeniable demand and frustration that Capcom finally wakes up and says, we have to make another real Devil May Cry game. Who knows, maybe this turd is exactly what was needed to make something beautiful grow. If you're a completionist or just enjoy hate watching, I'd say bootleg the bootleg universe. But man, they had the ingredients, they just did not know how to cook with them. I'd say maybe next time, don't shit in the pot. Anyways, I'm tapping out. I'm gonna go meditate on something that actually brings me joy. Hopefully, the next thing I review does not make me want to royal release onto my TV. But you know, I'm not the sort of person to complain and do nothing about it. I'm starting a little series, and that will be a playlist retroactively linked in the cards here called What is Cool and Why Is It Devil May Cry? I can't really stand to have something that I care about so deeply ever be tarnished like this ever again. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next video.